the next speaker is Miko Matsumura. He is the founder of Evercoin and venture partner with Bitbull Capital. He's working on launching a $30 million fund. So let's all welcome Miko.
Okay, hello and welcome. I'm very excited to be here in Malta. One of my missions is to establish an exchange here, which is Evercoin Exchange. That's my exchange. So extremely excited. Just wanted to talk to you today. My theme today is how to think like a VC. If you're doing a token sale, you need to think like a VC. If you're investing in tokens, you need to think like a VC. This is where the game has gone, so I'm excited to share with you kind of some of the thinking. But before I get too deeply into this, I just wanted to set the stage. So, is this a good investment? Yes. Haha, so people have really said interesting things about this chart. One is, depends when you got in. The other thing that people say that's very nice is it depends when you got out, right? But I will tell you a nice thing about this chart, which is this is actually Lehman Brothers, which turned out to be a terrible investment, depending on when you got in. But it also depending on very much when you got out, right? So this is a collapse, right? So if you look at the date of the collapse, September 15th, 2008, this really almost took out the fiat economy. This is what I call a Humpty Dumpty moment. And in fact, if you ask Bill Gates, will we have another financial collapse? Bill Gates will tell you it is a certainty. Right, so for sure, economic collapse is in our future. So what I want you to imagine from the perspective of collapse is I want you to imagine that you're in a very high place. And imagine that the beam that you're standing on could collapse. In fact, that you've seen a similar beam collapse. Watch this foot. What percentage of weight is on the second foot here? Very important question, right? The thing about it is this is a trust question, which is how do you trust your weight on a beam when you know that the beam will collapse, right? So the fiat economy is a beam that we know will collapse. So the thing that's interesting to think about in terms of the crypto economy is imagine the crypto economy is the second beam and the economy is now balancing across these two beams, right? So the thing that's really interesting about it, people say that Bitcoin is tulips. So if you look at the chart of tulips, the price goes very high and then it goes to zero and it never recovers, right? If you look at the price of Bitcoin, what happens is it crashes, and it's crashed at least 5 times more than 25% of its value. And so the point is crashes in Bitcoin are inevitable. But what happens is it actually goes higher. So what is happening? If you imagine someone is balancing their weight, they're really testing. They're testing, they're putting weight in, and then they're taking the weight out. People are storing the value, and then they're taking it out. The taking it out part is actually a test of whether it's able to store. But what happens when it passes the test is you test it again with even more, right? So that explains the phenomenon. So when I talk about inevitable collapse, there's a model for this, which is called self-organized criticality, and it was introduced by complexity researcher Per Bach, and it models collapse as a pile of sand. And it turns out that if you pile sand, you're going to have avalanches. And the more you pile, the bigger the avalanches get, right? So the thing that's really interesting about this is obviously as the slope of the pile increases, the chances and the size of an avalanche increase, right? So that's really what we expect. So everything is based on this model of collapse. So what I wanted to talk about after this, I think I may need a click from the back. Oh yes, of course. Enter this guy, Satoshi Nakamoto, October 31st, the month after the collapse of Lehman Brothers. The introduction, yeah, exactly. My cousin Satoshi from Japan. So this guy introduced a new beam that can support the global economy. And so far, the weight of maybe less than 0.5% of the body weight of the global economy is resting on this new beam. So broadly speaking, it's my thesis that open source money is going to consume proprietary money. So as you can see, this little Pac-Man is going to eat all these things, starting with Bill Gates. No, it's not going to eat Bill Gates, but he just happened to be a dot that was a good size to put there. So what I wanted to do is really talk about the phenomenon of basically the ICO. So if you look at this chart basically goes all the way through 2017, and it basically shows the emergence of the ICO phenomenon. So there's the Ethereum ICO, 19 million USD. Now, what I want to remind you is $19 million raised, Ether price 14 cents, right? So at a 14-cent Ether price, $19 million raised. So that's an interesting phenomenon, right? The other thing to kind of notice is that geographically, Europe has popped a few. That's the first Asian one, and there's the DAO, right? Everybody knows about the DAO hack and the emergence of Ethereum Classic. But now we're hitting the beginning of 2017. And 2017 is really when it starts to get more interesting, because you start to see a lot more classic ICOs of size. You start to see things like Filecoin, Bancor, Tezos, EOS, and some of these very classic large ICOs. So this is really, and this only takes us to about the end of last year. I think we are somewhere between maybe $6 and $10 billion in. So how should we reason about this phenomenon? So I think one of the biggest things that we should observe is that this should actually have a negative impact on the value of the entire crypto economy. Why a negative impact? I'll tell you why. If you look at all these projects and we raise $6 billion or more, what's happening is this is a $6 billion talent grab. So we've hired thousands of engineers, and what's happening is those engineers are actually converting whatever these tokens are, and Ether and whatever it is, they're converting it into fiat because they have to pay their rent and they have to buy groceries and they have to do all these things. So what's happening now is we're on a burn course, right? And that's going to have a suppressing impact on the total value of the crypto economy. What's my view on the $6.5 billion or more? I see it largely as a pillow fight. If you look at the value of all crypto, right? If you look at that red slice at the top, that's basically the size of all ICOs compared to the total crypto ball. So the impact of it has been pretty low. So let me talk a little bit about kind of how to think like a VC. The reason why I'm putting Japanese yen here is that a couple reasons, one of which is 55% of fiat to Bitcoin is Japanese yen. So the yen is a pretty aggressively dominant currency for crypto, which is why I've raised a crypto investment fund in Japan. And I feel like providing access to the Japanese market will be interesting. So let me get kind of closer to the punchline, which is, how do you think like a VC? So I think the first thing that you have to care about is teams. So everything has to do with the team, and in a way, what I like to say is I like to say team, traction, and idea. That's kind of the triumvirate. What you need to do is pick two, right? So one of the things that's fungible, so the idea is also fungible to some extent. I think the team is the dominant one because a team can change the idea, right? And in terms of traction, the team is the thing that delivers the traction. So if you look at the triumvirate, team is the dominant one, but you can have fungibility. So for example, if you have an inexperienced team, if you deliver a lot of traction, results, business results, whether it be users, revenue, product shipment, that's fungible, right? So it's really team. Team is the dominant thing. The second thing that I care about is time to crypto economy. How quickly can you get a functioning crypto economy? Having shipping products, having existing users, existing revenue, those are all super helpful. And then I think the last thing that I'm very passionate about is governance, which is who is in charge, who handles the custody, and who takes care of delivering the value that's in the white paper and the roadmap. So those are the things that I care the most about. In terms of like things I'm working on right now, I'm working on the Evercoin exchange, which I mentioned. This is my crypto fund, which is Gumi. And I've got basically 4 token sales that are in flight. If you're curious about projects I'm working on, you can visit miko.com, miko.com. If you want to get a hold of me, that's an easy way to get a hold of me too. You can hit me up on that website at the bottom. There's a contact form. And I know we're trying to catch everyone up, so I think I'm out of time. But I'll be around all week. So if you need to get a hold of me, contact me through the form, and I think that's it. Thanks very much.